The Edessa Mandylion. In 787, during the Council of Nicaea, the only mention of the Camulia is the protest against the iconoclast destruction of the pages in the missals which tell its story. Instead, there are several mentions, as an argument against the iconoclasts, of the holy image of Edessa, the towel which the Lord himself had apparently sent to King Abgar. However, you can judge for yourself. Send a messenger to Edessa, and let him tell you what he sees. The holy image, not made by human hand, exposed for public veneration. Crowds from all over the East flock there to pray. A story passed on since ancient times has come down to us, namely that Abgar, king of Edessa, sent a painter to Jesus to paint his portrait for him. But the painter wasn't able to paint it for the brightness of his face. So the Lord took a veil, put it on his holy and life-giving face, and impressed his image on it, which he sent to King Abgar. In 843, after the final defeat of the iconoclasts and the victory of orthodoxy, the Poetos of Edessa continued to rouse interest in Constantinople. This is understandable, since the mystery of the Holy Face of Christ is the very foundation of the art of icon painting. After the story of King Abgar, the earliest certain date of the image of Edessa is 544, when it was found in a niche in the walls of the city, and it had imprinted a copy on a tile. In 943, during the Arab occupation of Edessa, Byzantium organized an expedition to take the image to Constantinople. In exchange for a ransom of 12,000 pieces of silver, freedom for 200 prisoners, and a commitment not to attack Edessa, Constantinople received the towel, Mandylion in Arabic, which had been in the church for a long time, and which even Arab sources identify with the cloth on which Jesus had impressed his face. In 944, amidst great enthusiasm of the people, wonders and healings, the most worshipped icon of the East reached Constantinople, to be welcomed by the Roman Emperor Licapinus. The transfer took place on August the 16th, still a liturgical feast day today. In Constantinople, there was speculation about when the image was formed, one possible moment being the agony in Gethsemane. The relic therefore carried evidence of Jesus alive, but suffering. This, everybody was surprised to hear, was impressed only by the sweat of agony on the face of the Prince of Life, sweat that bled like blood, and by the finger of God. Everyone agrees on the main point of fact, that the image was imprinted on the piece of cloth by the face of the living Lord in wondrous fashion. But they differ on the moment when it happened, whether it was produced sooner or later, which does not affect the truth in the slightest. Here is the other tradition. When Christ was about to go voluntarily to death, when he showed human weakness, and he was seen agonizing and praying, his sweat dripped from him like drops of blood, according to the Gospel. Then, they say, he took this piece of cloth, which we see now, from one of the disciples, and wiped off the drops of sweat with it. Immediately, this visible image of his divine traits was imprinted on it. Since it is the only portrait left by Christ himself, the Holy Face or Mandylion became the prototype of all icons of Christ, a symbol of his incarnation. Each icon was based on this image and is reminiscent of it. As new churches sprang up, the image of the Mandylion and of its copy of tile, Keramion, was placed on the tambour supporting the dome, the place where heaven, the dome, and earth, the cube of the isle, meet. Indeed, something was discovered in Edessa in the 6th century and triumphantly brought to Constantinople in 944, something that has since then explained in detail the representation of Christ. Perhaps it was a shroud, whose bond with the Shroud of Turin, so frequently studied today, cannot be completely explained. In 1054, the division with the Eastern churches was sanctioned. In 1204, Constantinople, the queen of all cities, brimming with treasures and relics, was conquered and plundered during the Fourth senseless Crusade of Christians against Christians. A French soldier describes the conquest of Constantinople. Never since the world was established was such great wealth, or so noble or so magnificent, either seen or won. No, not in the days of Alexander, or of Charles the Great, or before or after. Nor do I believe, of my own knowledge, that in the 50 richest cities of the world could there be so much wealth as was found in the body of Constantinople. No Eastern church will claim the possession of the Holy Mandylion any more, while continuing to celebrate its liturgical feast and reproduce its image. Now there were yet other holy relics in this chapel, of which we had forgotten to tell you. For there were 2 rich vessels of gold, which hung in the midst of the chapel by 2 great chains of silver, and in one of these vessels was a tile, and in the other a towel, and we will tell you whence these relics had come. A holy man had a towel girt about him. "Give thither," said our Lord, "that towel." And the good man yielded it to him. And our Lord wrapped his own face therein, so that the likeness thereof was imprinted upon the towel. Then gave he it back to him. And he told him that he should carry it away, and lay it on sick folk, and that whosoever had faith therein, he would be cleansed of his sickness. And the good man took it and carried it away. But before he carried it away, when God had given his towel back to him, the good man took it and hid it under a tile until the evening. In the evening, when he went thence, he took the towel, but as he lifted up the tile, he saw the likeness imprinted upon the tile also, even as upon the towel. And he carried away both the tile and the towel, and thereafter were many sick folk healed by them. The theme of the tile can be found in several manuscripts. The main difference we can see between the reproductions, between the Mandylion cloth towel and Ceramian brick tile, is that the latter is the reflection of the former. So in the Mandylion, the eyes and forelock are turned towards the right, while in the Ceramian they are turned towards the left. After the sacking of Constantinople, hundreds of relics were taken to the west. A sanctam tuellam appeared in the list of relics ransomed by Louis IX for the Sainte-Chapelle in Paris. In 1362, an image of the Holy Mandylion arrived in Genoa. In 1287, a Syrian monk saw in Rome a piece of linen on which the Lord had impressed his image for King Abgar. The Mandylion was associated with the shroud, which appeared in France between 1355 and 1357. But Robert of Clary wrote that he saw the 2 relics in different places, and too many documents specify that the Mandylion is the only face of Jesus alive. With the exception of the shroud, all these images are magnificent Byzantine icons. But back to our history now. We finally arrived at the Roman Veronica, the 3rd Archero Poeta.